Hello, good evening. Welcome to the October meeting of SUFON. Nice to see so many of you out there. Alan's a writer, a researcher, an international lecturer on the implications of open disclosure regarding the existence of extraterrestrial life. As I said, his career includes 19 years in the airline industry, when he was managing airline travel operations, providing commercial transport for the US military in the UK and the US Naval Fleet in the Mediterranean. And he worked in airline operations at international airports, including British Airways, station controller and aircraft turnaround manager. Alan regularly writes articles and gives talks to community groups, professional organisations, universities and international conferences, and tries to raise awareness of the UAP and UFO subject. He's a columnist for UFO Truth magazine, and he's on the team of UK Pilots Reporting UAP's website. His work and research is taken into over 80 countries, and there's not many of us who can say that, is there? Now, on previous occasions here, he's discussed with us the spiritual consequences of UFO disclosure, the appearance of crop circles, and the Turin Shroud, and the appearance of angels, all of which were really extremely interesting talks. And I have no doubt that tonight's will be no exception to that. But tonight's talk is entitled Consciousness, All Things Are Connected. And Alan will describe how for several decades there's been an awakening process on Earth, enhancing our understanding of the cosmic reality and the long-term visitation by advanced civilizations from other star systems. There's also a growing awareness of a higher dimensional reality, and yet a concern for the Earth's biosphere and habitat loss. Globally, there's a deep-seated feeling that a transformation is unfolding, which will liberate people from the suppression and manipulation holding us trapped in an illusion of reality, which will lead to a rightful, prophesied spiritual evolution. Now, as you know, Alan's a smashing guy, and we're very proud to have him as a member of this organisation. So please give him a warm SUFON welcome. Alan, that's good, thank you.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Yeah. Right. Okay, can you see that with the lights? Are we able to have just one set of lights?
Yeah, you work a light.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's...
Okay. No.
Just one more, or is that it? Is it one or the other? Okay, alright.
All or nothing.
Can you see it with all on? I just prefer to be able to see.
Yeah, if you want one more.
Yeah, if that's alright.
No, all on. All on. He's behind you. Oh, there we go.
That's great. It's bright, isn't it? Are you alright with that? Would you rather? What would you rather? Okay. So thank you very much for coming tonight. It's nice to see everybody. The talk tonight is Consciousness, All Things Are Connected. And what I want to try and do is to highlight the fact that certainly at the subatomic level, everything is energy. It seems very dense and real, this realm that we're in, but actually it is an illusion. We are also getting a lot of help and guidance from high levels of spirit, and in some ETs as well that are very concerned about the state of the planet. So initially, I just want to highlight this is a classic example of how incredibly beautiful this planet is, as you're all aware. Totally exquisite. I mean, from my research and understanding, I would suspect, now with the extrasolar planets that have been discovered, there's about 5,000 planets that have already been discovered, in the local neighbourhood. So they're very aware now in mainstream astronomy that most stars probably have solar systems. If you think of the abundance on this world, then I'm sure that applies throughout the cosmos. We know we're being visited by many different types of beings, certainly through history and currently as well. So it's obvious that it's an abundant world, abundant universe. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge that this is probably one of the most exquisite worlds that you can imagine.
Like this drop.
Make sure you let me know. Thank you. I hope you... I'll tell you what I'll use the handheld. Okay, can you hear me with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
The fact that it's an abundant cosmos full of life, we're being visited. And yeah, I think that probably this is one of the most exquisite worlds when you look at it, the beauty of this, the nature on this planet. And to think that now, we're having habitat loss, extinction of species, in the last 30 to 50 years, up to 90% of various insects, bird life, plants, etc. is just an abysmal state. So there's real concern for us, but also there are others that care deeply about this world as well. And some of those are the beings that are associated with this particular craft. Now, I've shown this before, so some of you may be familiar with it, but this is the amazing plasma craft, photograph here taken by Carlos Diaz in Tepoztlan, which is in Mexico in 1981. It's believed, they call them plasma craft, it's believed that they're highly advanced, organic, sentient thinking technology, and they sort of connect to the pilot on a telepathic level. Carlos met the beings from this craft. They presented themselves to him as human, and on one occasion that he met them, they said, "We want you to meet us tomorrow, midday, in a particular village nearby." It's about 80 km south of Mexico City. So he went there the following day, midday, and as he approached where he'd been asked to meet this man, being, he was actually talking to a group of children, so speaking in Mexican. And he stood there and listened to him while he was talking to this group of children. And he was saying to them, it's really important you understand that all things are connected, that everything from a blade of grass to fields to the oceans and rivers, planets, solar systems, cosmic reality, many dimensions, and of course the spiritual reality are all one. Basically, it's all connected. It was this statement and other things that happened that made him very concerned about the state of the planet, which is why he wasn't only talking about the UFOs, but about his dedication and care for this world. Now, it was interesting, on one of the times that he went into one of these craft, he was inside and it was sort of yellowy orange inside, so he couldn't see anything. And he thought to himself, I wonder where I am. And at the very second that he thought that, suddenly the craft became translucent. And he could see that he was flying slowly over a forest. He was taken to a beach, and on that beach he could then see like the aura around all things, around all life forms, on the beach, the birds, the trees, etc. And it really helped him to recognise that there is this aura around everything, if only we can but see it. This is another photograph taken by a different witness of these objects. So it's not just Carlos, from 81 onwards, basically, for decades he was seeing these objects. And in March of 2014, I went to Tepoztlan. That's it. This is a reconstruction, but that's the image of it there. It's an amazing place. It's called a Sacred Valley. It's, again, as I say, south of Mexico City. It's regarded as a sacred valley. It's actually regarded as the birthplace of Quetzalcoatl as well. But there's something like 12,000 witnesses that have actually seen these craft in that area, including the mayor of the town who speaks out openly. They always talk about this openly in Mexico. They don't hide it as we do in this country. But I spoke to another witness when I was there, and he said just the month before, so this was February 2014, he saw, and several witnesses saw 3 of these objects. 2 of them were the same reddy yellow. One of them was a bluey white colour, and they were hovering just silently at the edge of the village. And then as they watched, after about 20 minutes, they just silently moved away. Many people, up to 12,000 people have acknowledged seeing these objects. Now, in September 2008, my ex-wife and I, we went to Madeira, and while we were there, this was up in the centre, in the mountains in the centre of Madeira, the topography of the land really reminded us of Tepes land. So we started to talk about this and say how amazing it would be to actually see one of these craft. So beyond sort of metallic type technology to something that seems to be more like you know, a living, thinking, sentient technology. And we said, God, it's so incredible if we could see something like that. And we suddenly then felt really strongly that something was going to happen. So the next picture that I took was this one, and it came up with this amazing object here. This is not a balloon, and it's not a ball on a cable or anything like that. This is clearly across the other side of it, in the middle of the valley. Even that sort of oblong, white oblong on top, it's really unusual. Again, so, you know, it was a really profound thing, because we had a heartfelt request to see something like this, and it actually responded. But there are those that study this, and we've had people speak here, about that often these craft or life forms are seen in the infrared or in the ultraviolet, you know, depending on the camera equipment you've got. We don't see it necessarily in the visual spectrum, but they're just outside of our visual range. So again, they're there, but you know, unless you're using technology or photographic equipment, which certainly most mobile phones don't, you can't see into the either side of the spectrum. So, you know, this stuff's around us, all around us. You know, there's so much more life going on here. Now, in last September, I went to Lebanon, just 3 weeks before all hell broke loose down in that region. But I wanted to go to Baalbek. Some of you may know about it. It's a truly profound place. I've been waiting for about 30 years to go and see it, and was really sort of grateful when I actually went. The incredible thing about it is, according to researchers, certainly like Graham Hancock and others, is that there is the ancient side there, and then the more recent Roman and Arab fortifications at that site. So basically you've got the Roman and Arab fortifications here, but it's actually built on a platform of these much larger 400-ton blocks here, creating a U shape. You can see people walking on it along there. And, you know, they in themselves are pretty profound. But round to the west, on the wall the other side there, are what's known as the trilithon, which are the 3 800-ton blocks that are they're just colossal, and you just can't imagine how anybody could move that. And I'll show you pictures of that in a second. But it was weird, because when I was putting this together and I was doing it, I started to think about how many megalithic sites that I've actually been to, and you know, I've looked into other areas, but it wasn't really part of my sort of research. But you just realise in a journey of life, the places that I've been to. This was Calanesh in the Isle of Lewis in '95, which are beautiful. It's a beautiful megalithic structure. And Pentre Ifan, which I'm sure many of you here will know, a truly amazing place in the Preseli Hills in West Wales. I love that one, actually. It's one of my favourites of all the sites, to be honest with you, because that capstone is 16 tonnes, and it's just positioned on like 3 fingertips of rock. If you look at it, you know, they're literally about the size of your fingertip, and yet it's been there for something like 5,000 years. It's also there's strong ley line energy in that area, but importantly, it's just down the road from the quarry where the blue stones were quarried that became the central circle in Stonehenge. So it's, you know, it has a lot of meaning. And this, of course, is Stonehenge at the top, with inside of which is the central circle with the blue stones. The blue stones are amazing. I watched a documentary recently, you know, in mainstream. It was an hour-and-a-half documentary about Stonehenge, and the usual stuff that we have to put up with. That, you know, these stones are dragged. You know, a few blokes with a small stone on a few rollers. Not even the 40-ton stones that are there, but most certainly no mention whatsoever of the stones having to come from Wales in 3000 BC across forests and over mountains or over on the water. But the incredible thing about the blue stones as well, which of course would never be mentioned, is the fact that they're known as ringing stones. So if you hit them, they actually produce a tone, and it's you know, they're full of crystals. So these are really sort of quite profound. That there's a belief that this may have actually been built as well as for astronomical reasons, but also as like a sonic temple. And let's not forget what's below it, of course. That's the amazing Julius set crop formation that appeared on the 7th of July 1996. And this is as the crop formations were starting to develop and go beyond sort of simple circles with rings, to these much more exquisite formations. This one's about 900 feet in length with about 190 odd circles. But what was amazing is about that as well is that it had a lot of really powerful energy with it. People could actually physically see vortexes of energy. They could certainly feel them or douse them as well. So it was a very powerful formation. And I think that was one of the ones that really, you know, this was in 1996. I became part of a group that, a Wiltshire group that became one of the leading research groups in looking at the sort of the science of the formations in the mid-90s. And this one, you know, people were just bowled over by this. This is one of Steve Alexander's pictures from temporarytemples.co.uk. Now again, talking of the, you know, the megalithic stones which are all over the place. This is Faldouet in Jersey in the Channel Islands. So, you know, Britain has so many, from right up in the, you know, in the tip of Scotland and the islands, all the way through Britain, Wales, and to the Channel Islands, and then just across the water at Carnac in Brittany. This is estimated to be from 4000 BC, and it's there's about 3,000 megalithic stones in that area. It's amazing if anyone's been there, but they're roughly, they sort of start off quite small, and they progressively get taller and taller until the taller ones at one end of this 3,000 set of stones. So, you know, what their function was is hard to say, but it's an amazing place. And of course, probably, certainly 4000 BC, the Channel Islands and France would have been connected, you know, you could have walked across, it wouldn't have been water as it is now, I don't think. Then this, where we get to the really big ones. This is an amazing, another sort of incredible trip. In March of '95, I sort of travelled around Egypt, but this one here, at night, there were a couple of us, we sneaked into the desert here, and then sneaked through it during the darkness, and actually you could get into that pyramid there, the little one, and we sort of slept inside there. And then before sunrise, the idea was to climb the Great Pyramid before sunrise. So we then got out just before the sun rose, walked round here, and then climbed up that edge there, which is stupid really. And people have died doing it. So, you know, when you're younger, those are the sort of things you do. But, you know, when I look back now, I think, what an idiot. But it was profound because, I mean, these are coaches here, so it gives you an idea of the size of this. Each block is about up to your sort of rib cage. So you have to pull yourself up each block, all the way to the top, and then the platform on the top. This is the Sphinx here, which is pointing due east, there, north-south. What was amazing is, that was, you know, on the top, I'm aware of, obviously, the research by Graham Hancock, you know, with Ancient Apocalypse, if anyone's seen that recently, where John Anthony West, Professor Robert Schoch, he looked at the Sphinx erosion, which he dates to about 10,000 BC. So the belief is that these are from the ancient civilization that existed, you know, prior to the apocalyptic biblical flood. There was a planet-wide flood, and also, you know, research has shown that correlation with the three pyramids and the Orion's belt are specific and exact to 10,500 BC, and the Sphinx was a mark of the constellation of Leo, rising in the zodiac, which also began at 10,500 BC. So the feeling is that, you know, that's the era when this was created, which was probably just prior to the destruction, the biblical flood. But certainly when I was on top there, looking across at this, the central pyramid, I had that distinct impression, there's no way is this from pharaonic times, this is much older than that. It's the only one there, it's got the outer cladding stones, the limestone cladding that they were all clad in. So when they were first constructed, can you imagine how amazing they would have looked? They're just with this white, reflective limestone shining in the sun. Most of it was taken for building projects, but it would have been truly profound. So an amazing place. And then this is another one. This is Teotihuacan in Mexico. That's the Pyramid of the Sun, which is also absolutely vast. And it just sort of shows I wasn't really thinking about this, because when I went there, I went up the pyramid there to the top, and there were loads of people up there. As everyone arrived, they were all going, hey, up to the sun. And I suddenly realised it was the equinox, the spring equinox. So again, it was one of those profound being there at that time, because it meant so much to the local people. But pyramids, as you well know, are planet-wide. It's not just Giza. They're in Mexico, South America, Bosnia, China. So to me, I think the ancients, it was a sort of standard form of construction that the ancients were using. Now, this is the trilithon, back to Baalbek again. And so the stones that I showed you on the first picture, the 400-ton stones, they're level with these here. So as it goes around the corner in the south, this is in the west. Then you've got above it the three trilithons. They're 800 tons each, and there's, you can't even get a razor blade between them. They're so precise. And the thought of how on earth would you get 800 tons up at that level? At the top, they're Arab fortifications from a later date. So I mean, these have been fairly well known about. But even more amazing, just down the road, about a kilometre down the road, is the quarry where those stones came from. And the stones down there are even bigger. This one here, in the quarry, left, I feel that these were being prepared, and then the event happened, that sort of apocalyptic event, 10,000 BC, and these were just left. This one was clearly very close to being ready. The edge was very sharp around the top. Now, it's amazing because there are pictures, from like 100 years ago of people standing on the dirt at that level there, with camels or whatever on the top. But so only within the last 10 years, from 2014, they started to do excavations to remove the soil and the sediment. This is what it used to look like. You see that line that I just showed you? That there, look. So basically, they'd been left, I think, for thousands of years, and it'd been infilled, the quarry had been infilled with sediment and sand and things like that. So when they did the excavations, removing the stone, they found, not only did they expose that one completely, but they found next to it an even bigger stone, and that's this picture here, look. So this is that block now that it's clear. You see the line there where it was cleared. And then they found next to it this one massive stone. It's estimated to be 1,670 tons. And if you look at the people on there, look, you just see the vast size of that. So they were preparing, the one at the top was just about ready by the looks of it, and then preparing the next one. Again, the information boards that are there show, just a handful of people with ropes and wooden pulleys and cedar wood rollers, that you've got to... they took this out of the quarry, up the road, and then lifted them onto the top. It's just ridiculous. Mainstream archaeology has really got to deal with this. So we have to be talking either technology or the power of thought, levitation, or something possibly. But there's the evidence. It's truly incredible. So the point of this talk is to sort of highlight consciousness and how we're being given information about that as well. And again, for most of you here who are fully aware of the crop formations, some of them, they've covered all aspects. The genuine ones, not the hoax ones, have covered sort of very complex layer of the crop, life forms, SETI or ET contact, religion and spirituality, prophecy and predictions. But there have been some that really do highlight the the aspects of consciousness. This is one of them. This appeared in 2012. This is called the Endless Knot, which is from Tibetan Buddhism, and it highlights. It's like a fractal. It highlights the fact that some people think that the total nature of reality is, say, like that bottom square. Other people think it might be a bit more than that, and it might be these 4 squares. But then, you know, again, depending on your you know, awareness or awakening, you know, it's all of this. But they're all connected, you see. The whole thing is flowing. It actually represents the interconnection of all things. All things are connected, which is what we're trying to discuss. It also represents the pathway of the individual, a symbol of birth, death and rebirth and karmic consequences, which is important. And it symbolises the infinite wisdom and compassion of the Buddha. Now, this is another formation as well. This one was quite incredible. This appeared in 2000, not far from the Silbury Hill, the Avebury Stone Circle area. It's that same, representing the same sort of thing, and the fact that, you know, some people can think that the total nature of reality might just be a square here, or 4 squares, or this bigger square. But actually, there are something like 1,600 squares and oblongs of standing crop in there. And it's even more amazing is that it actually, if you draw a line in the middle and you folded that, these the larger squares and pins there would actually plug into the ones on the left, and the same if you did it that way and did it this way. So you could actually fold it and they would be like a plug, you know, plugging into a socket. It's so ridiculously difficult to do. You just could never do that with ropes and planks of wood. But the weird thing is that that was actually quite a negative formation. I know of at least a couple of people who, as they were approaching it, they found the energy around it was really quite negative, and they didn't want to go into it. You know, so the feeling is, this is often called the silicon chip. The feeling is that, however profound it is, it was trying to highlight the fact that you know, there is a problem with our modern technology, and you know, you've got to be aware of it. And that certainly, because links into now, here we are, that was 2000, so 24 years later, now with the development of AI, that's certainly something we have to think about. This is, and there's this one, this was the, this is called the Tree of Life from the Kabbalah, so this is in Judaism, so you've got Tibetan Buddhism, Judaism. This also represents the creative force of God, by which the universe came into being, but also the individual path to understand the physical and the spiritual realm, leading to enlightenment. So it's a very similar thing on that journey of awakening and evolution. And then there was this one as well. This is this appeared in 1998, not far from the East Field in Alton Barnes, a sort of Mecca area where these were appearing. And this is beautiful. This is barley, and you can see with the crop laid, with the light, the way the light is catching how it was laid. It's really beautiful. But the amazing thing is that when Native Americans saw this, it meant a huge amount to them, because they said this is actually this image we use to describe revelation. So, like, you know, a revealing, basically, a time of revealing. When this appeared to them, this was really important, a statement of the time that we're in. And in fact, it was not only a couple of years before this that the birth of the white buffalo calf was birthed in North America, which was also a major sign for the Native Americans that we are in this time, as they call it, as well, of revelation. Now this is the ictus, which is the Christian fish symbol. The reason it's called the ictus is because, and why it was used as well with early, you know, in the early sort of 300s, is because the words Jesus Christ, God's Son and Saviour, the initial letters of that produce the word ictus, which is in Greek is fish. So you can see why this symbol was used to denote, you know, people who were following the teachings of Christ in those early first few hundred years. So what's incredible is that we were finding, as researchers into the crop formations in those sort of early 90s, mid-90s, there were quite a few researchers, people you would know, like Andy Thomas, who was here last month, Colin Andrews, etc. They were finding that sometimes if they were thinking about a particular image, the following day that image would appear in a crop formation. And they said there's no way, you know, sometimes they didn't even talk to somebody else about it and suddenly it was appearing. So they started to realise there must be some sort of telepathic aspect to this. So when we were aware of this, a fellow researcher decided that she wanted to sort of try this. So what she did is, based on the ictus, on that fish, she asked that something like that would appear, but that it had a more complex lay of crop. It was fairly small, so it didn't damage too much of the crop. It actually ended up appearing as about 70 foot, which is, by crop formation sizes, is quite small. But she also asked it to appear by the edge of a field. So again, there's minimum damage when people were walking into the crop, out of respect to the farmers. So she put that into an envelope and then put it away. And it wasn't until early the following year we found out that actually that formation had appeared, and it had the exact parameters that she'd asked for. A very complex lay of the weave of the crop, small, by the edge, so much so it was by the edge of the field that they actually wrote this on their report. But also, what was amazing is, when we went there, that to the next of it, or to the side of that field, is a footpath, and that footpath is actually the Pilgrim's Way that runs from Canterbury Cathedral to Rome. So it's as though it was responding not only to that request, but adding in the sort of the Christian pilgrimage side to it, because we were on a pilgrimage looking at crop formation, as well as the spiritual side as well. So it was like many things were answered. And that, of course, led over the years to the CE5 communications that have been happening. Mike's certainly aware of this. And, you know, this is benevolent communication and interaction. CE3, of course, is contact, like the movie. CE4 is abduction. CE5 is benevolent communication. But again, for those that do this, particularly people like Dr. Stephen Greer, as you know, you have to get into a meditative state to try and raise your levels of consciousness so that you're communicating with a higher source, which is the preferable way to have a benevolent communication. And we were finding that because the balls of light that were seen regularly over the crop formations, they would sometimes respond to flashlights, or even go into the sky and create sort of a geometric forms into the sky as well. So, but again, the feeling is, and those that do this, Mike, as he knows, he's had a lot of luck with this, that you do need to get into that higher space, that higher consciousness, if you're going to get this, to do this correctly. But talking of higher levels of consciousness, this really took it to a whole new level. This huge formation appeared on the 7th of July 2007 at the Eastfield and Alton Barns, which is basically the Mecca place where the really profound formations were appearing. This is huge. This is about 1,000 foot long by 500 foot wide. There's a person walking into the field up at the top there. It gives you an idea. That is basically the size of the Eiffel Tower laid into a field. But what's amazing is this image is like the Om symbol. The night that this appeared, there were a group of people doing a night watch where they were using ordinary cameras and infrared cameras. The field was pristine, no formation there. It became dark during the middle of the night at the darkest period, which is only sort of an hour and a half really at that time of year, in midsummer. There was a bright flash of light which illuminated the whole of the valley, and it actually sent an electromagnetic spike into the camera, the infrared camera. And then as it started to become light, they could suddenly see this huge formation was there. They estimated that it was only about 9 minutes. It appeared within about 9 minutes. It's absolutely massive. And as I say, it actually represents the Om, which is this. If you look at it sideways, that's the actual Om symbol. 1,000 foot long Om that appeared in a flash of light. And actually, it appeared on the 7th of July 2007, which is 777. And in numerology, 777 is the same as the ascension process. So again, to ascend to a higher dimension, or what happened to Christ. So here again, and the Om symbol, it represents the total consciousness of God. Everything that ever was, is, and shall be. But it also, as the formations I showed you earlier, represent the individual as well. So where you have like the solar plexus, which is the sort of the lower self, the lower aspect of the body, through to the crown, and then to sort of the higher self above, you know, the higher level of your essence that is here. So it was quite incredible. So then the following year, that was 777, so the following year there was going to be an 888 on the 8th of August 2008. Excuse me. And so loads of people were in that same area up at, you know, on Milk Hill and Adam's Grave, etc., wondering what's going to happen. They were out there overnight. And then on the 8th, 8/8, when it became light, this thing had appeared. Just a huge, massive 8. And in the field where it was, no one had seen anything. There was no one there, no lights. And it is so precise, again, regarding geometry. Now, again, 8 in itself is a powerful number because it sort of represents eternity. But I sort of see this as, again, it's quite deep, that this, the central part is where we are now. And you could say that this relates to the experiences we've had in this life. The important experiences here with the flame on the inside, going back to birth. Then where we are now, the previous experience in the here, and then the next experience, and so on. The important experiences within the life, and then with the flames on the outside, so highlighting sort of, you know, hopefully, even like Pentecostal fire, you know, a sort of an elevated consciousness. But it could also relate to previous incarnations. Where again, each one of these is going backwards into the past, previous incarnations that you've had, and more that you're going to have into the future. Even as well as that, it could actually be like the double helix of DNA, as if you look at it rather than lengthwise, you're actually looking at it along its sort of line. Quite incredible. And then this one, about a week later, on the 15th of August 2008, this formation appeared. This is another one by Steve Alexander. This amazing Celtic crucifix. Now, when you look at that again, I mean, it's like it's you know, it's a laser cut in a wood block. There is no way could anyone do that with ropes and planks of wood. And the thing that really proves that to me is when you look at the outside line, there's a border runs all around it. There's nowhere does it go with thinner or fatter as it would if people were trying to do that with ropes and planks of wood. Quite incredible. This is, you know, the sort of the version of it here. It's huge. It's 800 feet by 600 feet. That's a person standing in the middle there, and it's about 2.5 football pitches in length. Now, what's amazing is when that appeared, I was working on a late shift at the airport. And because this was mid-August, they were starting to harvest the fields, so we were concerned that, you know, we had to get over there quick. So we went sort of early in the morning, which is quite unusual to see a formation, but just to make sure we got to it, because it was so amazing. So as we were walking down this tram line here, from the road here, walking towards this massive Celtic crucifix, suddenly the church bells started to ring in the local churches. And it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's like a real acknowledgement of, you know, the reality of this. But also it actually appeared at the same time that there was a conference being held in the States by the leading researchers into the Turin Shroud, the STURP team, the Shroud of Turin Research Project. So, you know, for this to appear in corresponding with that, it has a major statement. It does to me anyway. And this is where, you know, this is an image of the Turin Shroud. As Steve said, you know, I spoke to you here before about that, so I haven't got time to go into it in great depth. Some of you may be familiar with the shroud, some of you may not be. Basically, it's a 14-foot length of cloth. The right hand would normally be above it, you know, as a single length of cloth. This is the negative. If you take a photograph of it, this is the negative of it. The marks on it are from a fire in 1532. But the image that is on the cloth itself cannot be replicated by modern science. And although we had the controversy of the carbon dating, which gave it a medieval date, that has now been disproven because they were using an area that had medieval reweave in it. All the sites now, all the forensics, all the provenance, the biology point to this being a cloth, a 2,000-year-old cloth, with this profound image, like a photograph, but it isn't actually a photograph. It's superficial in the extreme. And again, you see clearly it's a body. There's the face. You've got the blood flows from the cap of thorns, the crown there. You've got all of the flog marks all the way down the body, down the legs. You've got the blood flows in the heels. You've got the wounds from the nails through the wrist here. You've got the lance wound in the right-hand side here. Quite incredible. And in fact, some scientists, one scientist, Dr. Paolo Di Lazzaro from New Technologies in Italy, he experimented with lasers to try and replicate the surface phenomenon of the shroud, this image. The blood is from a rare AB blood, so it's a really unusual blood that comes from mainly about 3% of the population only in the Middle East, so even that's interesting. But the actual image, he tried to replicate that surface phenomenon of the shroud, and the colour's penetration is superficial in the extreme. It's 1/30th the diameter of an individual fibril in a 200 fibre linen thread. So if you think of a fibre of cotton, it's like it's not even barely touching one edge of that cotton thread. The ultraviolet light necessary to reproduce the image exceeds the maximum power released by all ultraviolet light sources available today. The flash of light would require pulses having durations shorter than 1/40 billionth of a second and intensities in the order of several billion watts. It's created by a milliburst of radiation at the moment of the resurrection. So, you know, I've been researching this for 20 odd years, and all the science now is showing that the shroud is the genuine article. That is an image of Christ turning into light at the resurrection. And in fact, just a few weeks ago, in middle August, recently some scientists, they've been using wide-angle X-ray scattering techniques to date the shroud, and that dates it as about 2,000 years old to the time of Christ. And actually, for a change, there were many positive reports in the mainstream media about it, you know, which up to now, of course, there's been the usual debunking, but quite incredible. So, what I'm trying to do here is just to highlight that, as well as our own personal journey, we are also being given help from higher beings that come to Earth to help us. That, to me, also applies to Mother Mary. Some of the sightings, I do believe, are her, where she appears, particularly to the children. But one of the places, this is Medjugorje in Bosnia. It's a really amazing place, and there's a real sense of sort of peace. They regard it as the most peaceful and spiritual place on the earth. But it is really peaceful there, it's beautiful. It was from 25th of June 1981, so this is quite recent. And the sightings there has been happening regularly over several decades now. And again, giving messages of encouragement, you know, have faith, basically, going through these sort of dark times. But it's amazing because it was, this is as you're driving into Medjugorje, during the Yugoslav wars, all around the area there were fighting going on, but for some reason there was no fighting within Medjugorje. So they've got these signs now to sort of say no to tanks, no to guns, this is a holy place, which I find beautiful. So I'll just talk about one other as well, again very briefly. I could spend all day on this, but there's another one as well that's known as Our Lady of Guadalupe. Interestingly enough, this is just on the outskirts of Mexico City, but this dates back to December of 1531. Now that is the image, and of course we all look at that and go, oh, it's a painting, but it's the same as the shroud. The shroud is not a painting, it's not a photograph like using chemicals. It looks like a painting that appeared on the tilma, which is the coat of a guy called Juan Diego. I'll just show you that so you know what I'm talking about. They used to have, the coat was basically made from the fibres of maguey cactus, so very rough fibres, a full-length cloak. He had seen a vision of Mother Mary, and she was saying she wanted him, or wanted them to build a chapel in respect to her on the top of this hill, Tepeyac Hill, which is just outside Mexico City at the time. So he went to the bishop, and the bishop said, yeah, well, give me proof that you're seeing Mother Mary. So he went away. The next time he went past the hill, Juan Diego, she appeared again and said, if you want to give proof to the bishop, go to the top of the hill now. And this is in December, so it's cold, you know, it's quite high elevation there, so it's chilly. And he went up to the top, and there were flowers blooming, including Castilian roses, Spanish roses. So he gathered these up in his tilma, and then he went to the bishop and said, he said, I have proof that she's real. You know, to us it's no big deal because we see flowers all year now, but you know, back then this was something incredible. So he opened his tilma, and these roses fell out, but then there was this image which was actually on the tilma itself. It's incredible. It's been studied by like Kodak technicians, photographic technicians, and they say that although it looks like a painting, it's actually more like a butterfly wing, or you know, like the throat of a hummingbird, where you get sort of the light reflecting. It's not actually paint. And even when they looked even closer, like with ophthalmology, and they zoomed into the eyes, it's quite incredible. They could get to the stage where they could look at the reflection that was in the eye, and it actually showed 3 people in the reflection of her eye, as though she was standing in the room when it appeared, and there was the bishop there and his interpreter and another person. And they said that's impossible. You just couldn't do that. So, and it's basically the maguey cactus fibres these last about 20 years. It's now 500 years later, and the bombs have blown up in front of this, fires, acid is being thrown on it, and all sorts of things. So it's amazing. But I just show this again to highlight there are some amazing miracles that happen. You know what you. Right. So what I'm going to do now is I'll cover a little bit more about the sort of ET side, probably perhaps a bit more relevant or not. It's a very complex reality that we're existing in, multifaceted, multidimensional, and I think for us to understand truly what's going on, we need to understand all those areas. Certainly the ET side, clearly we've been visited for thousands of years, and are being visited now. So I put this montage here to show you, and you know, there's various types. As an example, the reptilians, which are either physical beings or negative interdimensional entities, possibly. The greys, where you have either the taller greys, say 4-foot tall greys, or the 3-foot smaller ones. And in fact, in some cases, it's believed that the smaller ones are automatons, they're not actual living beings. Top left, I show the human types, sometimes known as Nordics. And what is really interesting, in 1964, Command Sergeant Major Bob Dean, who was an intelligence analyst at the SHAPE headquarters, the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, the NATO HQ in Brussels, because he had a high top secret clearance, he came across a document called the assessment document. And this was the assessment of the extraterrestrial situation on Earth, but for those with a need to know. And of course, as we know, you know, there will be many prime ministers and presidents that aren't allowed to know about this subject. He said that in 1964, they were aware of at least a dozen different ET races that were interacting with the human race. And in fact, I believe there are a lot more than that now. But what's interesting, he said that they were more concerned about the human type ETs than greys and reptiles. Because they could walk in the corridors of power, like the Pentagon, the White House, and you wouldn't know that they were actually an ET because they look like us, or we look like them. There are light beings. Up at the top right, I showed a picture of an angel, not because an angel is an extraterrestrial, but because this is a multifaceted reality. We need to understand all areas of that. I think it's really important we understand that angels, from my perspective, are divine beings from God that help people at pivotal moments within their life. So it's either, at special important moments on their life journey, or perhaps to help them save them or protect them, and of course particularly at the point when you pass over, when you leave this realm, to be helped back into heaven with angels. These are not ETs. ETs, although they are obviously highly advanced, there's capabilities that are beyond what is certainly taught physics, is a separate thing. But this is some area where, further down the line, with more and more disclosures happening, there will come a time when we have to debate this in a big way, because I think some people want to lump the angels into ETs, but they're not. They're separate. They're spiritual beings. And then down at the bottom is the I show you like the military side of this. Again, like the military, some military black ops involved in working with some of these beings in deep underground bases, possibly even with the abduction side as well. And again, what they call the military abductions, MILABs. So again, this is a nefarious side that, as more and more of this information comes out through these congressional hearings, most of mainstream will be shocked at what's been going on behind the scenes. Now, this is Colonel Phil Corso. He was a national security advisor for President Eisenhower, and President Eisenhower saw human-type ETs. He had a meeting with human-type ETs in February 1954 at Muroc, which became Edwards Air Force Base in California, and then the year later in '55 at Holloman Air Force Base. So he was fully aware of the ET reality and of their technology. Corso himself saw one of the dead bodies from the Roswell crash that was held in a liquid, in stasis in a liquid. He also met a living ET that sort of communicated with him as well out in the desert. So he was aware of ETs on a personal level. Colonel Phil Corso was the head of the Army's Research and Development Department at the Pentagon from 1961 to '63, and he, in that time, he was tasked with seeding some of the technology that had been retrieved from the crash of the UFO at Roswell, put it into mainstream industry through the government contracting programs. So things like silicon chip, fibre optics, night vision, Kevlar, the body armour, lasers, etc. He was tasked with seeding that through corporations like IBM, Monsanto, General Electric, that were already working with these sort of technologies. So it appeared as though it was part of their natural progression of innovation. But we had a helping hand basically with our technology from ET technology. Some people think that possibly, I used to talk about this, that it was like a Trojan horse in a way, because it was, were we meant to have that technology for our development? Again, when you look at the AI side of this, that does become sort of perhaps making some sort of sense. Now, so if we're talking about consciousness here, and what do we focus our thoughts on basically? Because what you think about, you can manifest. Of course, we would have to say that this is the planet of war. The military-industrial complex is all about war. It's the business of war, and we're all focusing on it at this particular time more than we have done for a long time because of what's going on. And I want to give you an example of that, how there is a business of war, how you can make money out of war at our expense. This is the B-2 bomber, and just one of those will cost you $2 billion. So that is the equivalent of, say, £1.6 billion. Now, if the average salary in this country is possibly something like £25,000, something like that, it would take you, at £25,000, it would take you 64,000 years to have enough money to buy one of these. I keep on doing that sum because I think that just seems ridiculous, but you try it yourself. So you can see the money that is made from the military hardware, trillions and trillions of dollars globally. There's no incentive to not have war.
And yet the irony is, there is this sort of ET aspect to it as well. This is the stealth fighter. I took this picture in '92, just after the first Gulf War. And there were often rumours that there was some ET technology in the stealth fighter. But I mean, it has the same sort of, it has normal flight characteristics. But so it may have been referring to some sort of advanced, like fibre optics or computer technology that's in there, possibly. The B-2 was developed by Northrop Grumman. The stealth fighter was developed by Lockheed Martin. Now, this is really fascinating. Again, I'm sure some of you will know about this, you would have heard about this, but this is Ben Rich. He headed the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, which developed the stealth aircraft. And he made a presentation to the Engineering Alumni Association at the University of California in Los Angeles, of which Rich was an alumnus, on the 23rd of March 1993. And he said, at that presentation, we already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects, and it would take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity. Anything you can imagine, we already know how to do. He then said, or as he concluded his presentation, he announced, we now have the technology to take ET home. After the presentation, he said, regarding the possibility of us travelling to the stars, you know, in view of most people think of just, you know, lumbering old rockets, basically. He said, it won't take someone's lifetime to do it. There is an error in the equations, and we know what it is, and we now have the capability to travel to the stars. He was then asked by a delegate, Jan Harzen, Ben, what equations are you talking about? How does UFO propulsion work? Rich said, let me ask you, how does extrasensory perception work? Jan replied without thinking, all points in time and space are connected. Rich shot back, that's how it works. So again, at that high level, they were becoming very aware that to operate this technology, you had to go beyond just a pilot and nuts and bolts technology, or rocket technology, into this sort of high level of sci. And it's funny because this is a brilliant picture by Philippa Foster. It was said, you know, like in the 50s, 60s, 70s, that some of the technology that was retrieved, they had like finger pad, you know, key operating for these craft, or headsets for the pilot to interface with the craft, or even the more advanced technology was telepathic. You could communicate with the craft telepathically. And I mentioned that earlier on with with Carlos Diaz in Mexico, you know, where he was thinking, I wonder where I am, and suddenly the craft became translucent, and you could see where he was. So this was sort of discussed, has been discussed over decades really, that there is some sort of, or can be, a communication with the pilot and the craft itself. And this was alluded to as well. You're all familiar with this, of course, the former intelligence operative David Grush, and under oath on the 26th of July last year, 2023, under oath, saying that the US government is in possession of UFOs and non-human bodies. This is a really big event. You know, we've been waiting for decades for congressional hearings to discuss this. We had the sort of the lame one, the first one, and then this much more profound hearing. But what's interesting is, just recently, so this is 8th of July 2024, Daniel Sheehan, he's the legal counsel for many of the whistleblowers and those that were involved in the disclosures, you know, that happened at the National Press Club. He said that the Senate Intelligence Committee has now secured the testimony under oath of over 40 people who were directly involved in the UFO, UAP, reverse engineering and crash retrieval program. They have cleared David Grush to testify in public in Congress that we were in possession of more than one extraterrestrial non-human spacecraft, and the biological evidence establishing that the occupants of the craft were non-human. That info has been cleared by the US Defense Department Office of Pre-Publication Review. That was like a year after the other congressional hearing. 2 of the craft they recovered were fully functional. That doesn't mean they know how to fly them. Those craft, they appear to be navigated telepathically, and this is a big statement. And again, this sort of links into what Ben Rich was saying and what you hear from other contactees and abductees as well. So there seems to be this consciousness side of this. And I think you know, as Ben Rich was saying, I don't think you can travel among the stars or go superluminal or even interdimensional until you understand the psychic side. It's just not possible, otherwise you're just too left-brained and too sort of mechanical. And that even Dr. Edgar Mitchell alluded to this as well. Again, within mainstream astronomy, you know, they generally are saying that we may be the only planet with life on. But, you know, when you have several of the mainstream astronauts talking about this, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Gordon Cooper, Buzz Aldrin, Story Musgrave, Scott Carpenter, these are really respected astronauts by mainstream astronomy. And they've all spoken out openly about their own experiences of UFOs or knowing other people that have. You know, and one of the things that Edgar Mitchell said was, we all know that UFOs are real. All we need to ask is, where do they come from and what do they want? Now, he ended up setting up the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which was about consciousness studies, and also the FREE, which was the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experiences, again, going into the more psychic areas. Now, highlighting this, on his way back to Earth through space, Apollo 14 astronaut and IONS founder Dr. Edgar Mitchell had the profound experience of feeling interconnected, all things are connected, to everything he was observing from the window of his space capsule. So the stars, the moon, our blue planet, and the vastness of the cosmos. He quickly realised that in order to explain such an extraordinary experience, and others like it, there would need to be a rapprochement, friendly relations, between the scientific, left brain, and spiritual interpretations, right brain, of reality. So Dr. Mitchell saw a need to reconcile his training as an engineer and astrophysicist with the wisdom of the angels, to transcend the limitations of what he saw as an outdated, materialistic worldview. A new framework would be needed, one that would help explain the unexplainable and spark transformation. He called this framework Noetic Sciences, and Noetic means inner wisdom, direct knowing, intuition, or implicit understanding. And now IONS now has one of the world's largest teams of multidisciplinary scientists conducting research on frontier topics in consciousness and its impact on our lives. Dr. Mitchell said, we need to make the world safe for creativity and intuition, for it's creativity and intuition that will make the world safe for us. Again, this is the left brain, the right brain thinking as compared to left brain materialistic thinking. And a beautiful statement by Nikola Tesla saying, the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence, which I think is fascinating. Now, I bet you didn't think you were going to see that, did you? Next slide. So this would seem as though this is off topic, but it isn't. There was a gentleman called Lawrence Anthony who, in South Africa, he set up a sanctuary for orphaned baby elephants and rhinos because their parents were being killed for their tusks and the horns. And so this place was called Tula Tula in South Africa. And he, over a period of time, he had a real bond with the animals, but there was one particular one called Nana that he had this really, really strong bond with. Eventually she grew up and she was released into the wild along with others as well. On the 2nd of March 2012, Lawrence Anthony died, he passed over. And unbelievable, the following day, Nana and some other elephants returned from the wild, came up to the sanctuary and stood by the fence, just sort of in like head bowed, looking at the place where he lived and where he'd actually just died the day before. That in itself is amazing. How could she have known that he's passed over? But it's even more incredible because the following year, on the same day and at the same time, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, she came back again And then the following year again, another year later, on the same day, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's 3 years in a row, as if to mark her respect for him. So again, I show this because we're talking consciousness here, and it's important we understand that, you know, it's not just us. This is about all life on this world and all, you know, all creatures as well. And of course, the animals have got souls as we do. But you know, how did she know? Was it telepathy, or did he in spirit go to see her? Which I suspect probably happened because of his respect for her. But it's just a really, really beautiful thing. Now, I show this formation. Generally, talking about crop formations, the reason I show this is because this is what I call a crop-specific crop formation, where it's only the wheat that's laid down. So the rest of the image, of course, you know, should flow into the grass field next to the wheat field. And in fact, the weird thing is, I'll tell you this, is that when that appeared, there were cows in that field, and there were one of the photos that taken of a group of cows, and they were all standing in a circle at that point there, as if they were actually recognising the energy of what would have been there if that had actually laid the grass into the same image. Quite incredible. But also to highlight the fact that I've seen myself and others have, that there are some formations where it's only, like in this case, the wheat that's laid. So if you've got something like weeds or poppies within the formation, or stalks from, say, barley from the year before, they all remain standing, but it's only the wheat that's laid. Again, how would you do that with ropes and planks of wood? It shows how advanced the technology was for some of the genuine formations, that I think they can literally specify wheat, and only wheat would lay. But that's not really why I'm showing it. I show it because it's a way of highlighting how I feel where we're at now. I feel we're sort of along this line here. We're standing in the grass field, and there's the fence, and then there's this incredible, beautiful formation ahead of us. But I feel like we're at this point now where there's like 8 billion people in a line this way, and all of our history and everything behind us, and we're not really going any further forward. Everything that's happening is sort of spilling left and right. You know, all the warfare that we're seeing, you know, the sadness, the misery, the depression, suicide, EMF interference, things like that. They're all really affecting us, but we're not really developing further. I feel like perhaps we're up against the veil itself. You know, it may be just prior to going to that higher dimension. Obviously, there's joyous events and wonderful things happening as well. Don't get me wrong, but it's like it's all come to this point. We're at this point now. We're so close to stepping beyond where we can suddenly see the beauty of that formation, or you know, something magnificent beyond it. So we're so close. But talking of the AI revolution, as one of the aspects, not only EMF interference, but AI is really important. As you well know, Andy Thomas came here last month and spoke about it. This was him talking about that at the Glastonbury Symposium this year, July 24. And it's very prescient, because the point with AI, it can, if it's unleashed, one, you have to say, where does it get all this information from? In a world like this, you know, if you went to a planet where the truth was spoken, and you know, everybody was kind and good and honest, and then you developed AI, it wouldn't be so bad, because the AI would be getting its technology or its awareness from the truth. You know, this place is full of lies and deception, so and military particularly, so that's a bit concerning. But you know, it really will take over, and if it's allowed to continue, you know, many of the jobs, humans basically become obsolete. So like banking, construction, stock exchange, journalism, education, military applications, etc. But you know, worse than that in a way. It's because they say, oh, it's all right, you know, you'll be at home, you can relax, you know, it'll do all the work. But you know, that's not going to happen. But what becomes of things that are very relevant to humans, which is art, literature, poetry, music, the right brain functions, which I was just talking about. morality and goodness. And I don't think that's acceptable to spirit. You know, I think the spirit, God, consciousness, higher beings, and us, the higher self, it is not the way forward. This is why I feel like we're reaching this impasse at the moment. So, we are spirits. This is an illusion. At subatomic level, everything's energy. I love this. This is one of my favourite paintings. This is by George Edgar Hicks, and it sort of really highlights that. You have this dense area here, which is a third dimensional plane, and these parents are so tragically, they've lost their child. It is really sad. But the actual truth is that the soul of that child has left the body and now is being, you know, it's moved into the light and is being welcomed back into heaven by the angel in this case, or it could be loved ones that have passed over previously, beings of light. That is the truth. So the soul of that child has now moved on. But here, in the material plane, it just seems so tragic. We've got to remember that. So just heading towards the conclusion, this is a picture made up of images. Just to sort of highlight again, you mustn't forget how beautiful this planet is. It's stunning. If you could believe this was a library world, as many people do, that people incarnate here for the experiences, you cannot imagine. I can't imagine there's any other planet in the universe that has as many diverse opportunities for growth and understanding. There may be some similar, but it's just ridiculous. And that photograph alone highlights that. We're all people all over the world, you know, different colours, races, creeds, socio-economic aspects, and here again of different religions, but basically we're all souls on earth. We're a family of souls, and it just depends where you're born as to what area you look into, what religion, you know, your peer pressure, your family's influence, etc. We've got to remember we're souls, and all of this, of course, can cause division, but it's unnecessary. So, this is the final slide. So I just want to read this in conclusion. That we are more than just the physical, that we affect the world around us even by our thoughts, that this time on earth is known about, and we have help and guidance as we go through these changes, and are not alone in these endeavours. Thank you very much. Thank you.